Okay, itu no. Nazim.
Debbie, Nishnish, thank you very much, singers, for that beautiful singing. Nishnish Koshka for leading us in this day. I want to thank my dad too for the ceremony that we had today, plus Chin Linden and Msiga Howie to help look after us in the ceremony.
Alexis, Johnny Alexis, Anthony Potts, Stoney, Howard Mustus, Thomas Potts, Roderick Alexis, Cameron Alexis, Tony Alexis, Willie left that.
We want to, today marks the day 140 years ago that the chief, his name is Nabik Duzahan. And 140 years ago, he signed treaty. He adhered to treaty. But today is to honor all of our leaders, the past leaders, since the adhesion of treaty. We know as Native people we had a life before the signing of the treaty. But since that time to where we are at today, what we've counted was there was 15 chiefs, and there was 75 members of council since that time. And back then they weren't called councillors, they were called headmen. When the treaties were being signed, there's many stories that we have in a community, and those are the things that we have to bring out. And times like this is when we share those stories. We have the written text of how it was written by the government, because when we think about where we are at as a community, one of the stories we have a gap. We have gaps in our history, and the reason why we have that is because of an instruction that was given to us, and you hear it all the time. Don't tell them where you come from. Don't tell them the ceremonies. We even used to hide the sweat lodges in the bush. You do everything in the bush, and even ceremonies. You couldn't do it because it was illegal. But today we don't have to do that. Today we don't have that. But what they must have went through that time, because they even dealt with smallpox. People were dying. There was a Mtashin here in the reserve that was burying people on a regular basis, 2 or 3 at a time. And we still stand here. And around us are all the different languages, the Shijabi, Shahiabi, the Soto, the Cree, and the English talkers all around us. But somehow this community maintained our language, maintained the customs, and we've always had such a strong beauty of this community, and to carry it forward. And the other thing that we have, Hank reminds us all the time, is the Kasami. Kasami looked after us, throughout the year, and we always went there. And people always made that a part of their every season. And I remember even back then they used to come to my dad's house. They would come and get that Gichamin, bring tobacco, and they would take it. And then you had to chase your bundle to the Kasami. I remember that. Our generation has a lot of work to do. And so the direction that we have to go, we think the next 140 years from this day. We even had an eclipse here today. Who knew that was going to happen? And we didn't plan it around an eclipse either. It was the 140th anniversary. And that's something significant that we will talk about. And we're also documenting this so that we can share it and archive it for the future, what this day was for us.
This, be that it may, that it is an archaic piece of law, we are very specific that we do have the only medicine chest provision, and we can interpret this at our discretion. We can bring this up to modern terms and reimagine the law in our own way. And these treaty terms, they're not defined. Words can be used to benefit our rights. So we are not limited to the provisions of the treaty. And because we have Constitution, Section 35 and Section 25, we have that jurisdiction to keep asserting our rights and keep asserting our interests in our territories.
The treaties was entered into with sovereign nations. Only sovereign nations can enter into treaties. And so that's what we profess today, that we're sovereign nations and we entered into the treaties sovereignly. When you enter into an arrangement with that sovereign status, there's no other law that can supersede you in. Prior to signing of the treaties, King George III in 1776 issued the Royal Proclamation saying, that land out there belongs to the Indians. Nobody can acquire a title to that land until I get permission from the chiefs and their leadership, their headmen, to be able to distribute that to you. Uchagi chose to them. That's what the Royal Proclamation is. But we have a young lady that just spoke here that can interpret our rights from our perspective. For too long, we've depended on a non-indigenous interpretation of what those rights should be. And when my partner chooses to mentor me, he tells me that. He said, we're sovereign. The Creator has sanctified the powers and authorities to create ourselves a livelihood.
As I was going there, sir, that's such a party. What makes sense to me? I said. I remember when I was became a chief, we did a ceremony. Indian Affairs said we had to do a swearing ceremony by the lawyer and everything, and then you had to sign these papers. But that was for them. What we're saying is that we will acknowledge whatever you have. But then we had another one, because I remember my uncle saying that we got to have a headdress ceremony to go up to. You know, I come to understand what that ceremony is. When you put the headdress on your chief or your council, you know, that headdress is your constitution. That's the Howard sovereign right, and that's where your sovereign right is. It's not in that agreement that you sign. It's acknowledging, telling the chief, we give you the right to govern us. I brought the elders, about 30 of them, maybe 35, to the States, and we made our round. We came back. And then we said, Alexis Nakota Sioux Nation. You know, Nakota na important. Igibi, we have our traditions, asking Siwan sovereignty, be taking ownership back, taking and putting the feather hat on our chief, and having that sovereign right given. When we talk about this 140 years we signed treaty, you know, I heard some of these people educate you on that. They really good education, but we did not sign the Indian Act. So treaty means, like Howard was explaining, natural resources. No, we didn't give it away. We didn't give anything. We said we'll co-manage everything. Our grandfather said very similar words to what Sitting Bull's writing here. He said, "That's a washte na augi nabitun. Kada ibis that's a washte shibadai nabin washu to keep each ya nabte in." You blend the two, you make everything strong, and that's how you live. And that's what Igibi, our treaty, was. We did not agree to stay in little boxes of land in this beautiful country. We agreed to live and share and live in harmony.
When our forefathers entered into treaties, it was supposed to protect our rights. Alexander Morris said, "You will have it then as you have it now," which meant we're allowed to do continue our way of life, and practice our livelihood. We interpret it as ourselves because two nations came together and signed a treaty. We are the only people in the whole wide world that live under treaties. And when we try to do something, it's outlawed. They outlawed our sun dances, they outlawed our cultures, they outlawed our ceremonies, they outlawed everything. But in spite of all that, we are all here. Practice your treaty rights, go hunting, go fishing, go do whatever you want to do as a native person. It's your culture, it's your way of life. The Washirubi, they always say, we gave you land. If they gave us land, we'd have land in Europe because this was our land. But the treaties are sacred, the sun is still shining, the grass is still growing, the rivers are still flowing, and we are still here.